The RCMP Heritage Centre is a not-for-profit charitable organisation mandated to share the story of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. This is one of those stories, part of your heritage.
One of my schoolmates and I went down to Calgary, going to join the fire department. And unknown to us, you had to be 21 years old or you couldn't join the fire department. And right across the street was the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, so we walked over there and we applied. Within about 3-4 months I was in, and my buddy never made it. He was a little short. Well, I was 18 years old, fresh out of high school, and came from Carstairs, Alberta, which is, at that time, was 40 miles north of Calgary, and there was a British settlement, and somebody by the name of Carstairs got married or something there, and that's how the town got its name. Once I got in the force, we go to Ottawa for training, and probably the first thing I really remember about being in Ottawa and training was there we are, about 32 of us out there push lawnmowers, no hats, coveralls, and our dress shoes. And first thing in the morning we got up, we had to shave and get on parade in coveralls. And when you got your 6:30 parade work done, you come back upstairs, change the civvies, went back downstairs for breakfast. Then when you're finished breakfast, you go back to your dorm, put your coveralls back on again. You did the same thing for dinner, same thing for supper. And there we are out there they shaved all our hair right off. And guys that had sunburns, but we caught on pretty quick. Pushing those mowers was a little tough. So we started, just like the geese fly, we kept switching. The lead one, then you'd only do half a pass or something. And it was a lot easier to push then, because you pushed it all day. My first thing I remember being on a horse was, I was maybe grade 1 or 2. My father came back from the Second World War, and we moved to the farm. And I used to walk a half a mile, and then I'd get on a horse with the neighbor girl and ride to school. But then after, that was okay for the first few months, because then she was finished school. We had an old mare on the farm there, about 23 years old. So I started riding her, and one day we're going down the road, and all of a sudden down she goes, so I stepped off, and she had a roll. I stepped back on, she got up, she never tried it again. Tried to get rid of me, I presume. But one day she did get rid of me at the school. Instead of taking the halter shank off her neck and tying it, I pulled the bridle off, and she just wheeled around and went straight home, crawled under the gate, and was standing at the barn door. I had to walk home. Ben Ewan was our instructor, and he was out of Saskatchewan or someplace, but he'd been on a ride, and he was quite a trainer, because his horse, when he went over, it kneeled down, he stepped on the saddle, got up, or he'd lay her down, and she'd lay there, and he'd sit on the rump and be giving us the instructions that way. But he was a good instructor. He did his thing, and it was new to me, because I'd never ridden in a saddle until I got to the force, and those little flat saddles were different. We used to have a balaclava, and it was just like how a magpie's nest is all sticking around. Well, this was a kind of a weaving, and there was a helmet. And there would be a stick on top about 6 inches long and about 3/8, and you hit it with the truncheon.
Oh, yeah.
And I just remembered this just the other day about this balaclava. And sometimes they're on horseback and you're going by and take a swing. It wasn't too accurate. So you got a pretty good rap, but nothing to hurt you. But we had the balaclava, we had the push ball. And actually the horses, some of them got to really like it. And once they caught on, boy, they get that ball going. And but one of our instructors one day, he was pushed, and the ball wasn't really full enough of air. And his horse went up and he had spread legs all over this ball, and the ball, or he's trying to get off, and the ball is waving, and he can't get off. The horse can't get off because it's got no footing. Anyways, he pushed him over. And we always used to try to do something different every so while, a certain period of time, so there'd be more interest. In fact, with that push ball, I had some of my guys put the horses away, and they would do it on foot. Well, if you've seen a scramble, that was very interesting. But generally, it's to build a little determination, and I always. One time we had to write out why we should have the horses, what good value were they? Because we're not riding horses anymore. Why do we need them? But if you were in the stables or in the drill hall or the gymnasium, they're all the same. It's to build some character and a little bit of stamina in these guys. Some of them never seen a horse. They didn't want to go near it. But about 3 weeks or a month, they just loved it. I see some good riders come out of eventually that grew up in the city and never rode a horse in their life. And then guys that grew up with horses, never going to make it. It's and another thing, I don't know if you've noticed, but no matter where you go, if you start talking about something about the force or whatever, if the guys have been on the ride, it evolves back to the horses. They always got fond memories of what happened here or there. One day, one of our guys, he's riding a remount, quarter marker to quarter marker. Used to go around, and then you had to canter across to the next quarter marker. Well, he's going across there, and all of a sudden his horse bucks, and there he is, way up in the air, comes down. He's still got the saddle between his legs and hits the ground. The girth broke. But nobody got hurt. Some of those things were pretty memorable. I don't think there's anything nicer than hearing the national anthem as you're coming through the gates. Da-dum, 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 da-dum. And that was great. And then I went to the Crippled Children's Hospital in Springfield, Massachusetts. We did it with the ride, and Winnipeg in Canada. And the horses, we took them to see all the kids because they brought them all out on their beds and their chairs and whatever. And of course, we're nice guys. We're going to take all our pockets are full of candies. Well, these kids probably couldn't eat candy. We're supposed to, but anyways, those horses went up to those kids just like they were supposed to. In their nose in there and rubbed their nose on their. And it was quite a moving sight. One lady, she phoned me about 4 days after to thank me for going to see her son because she's 200 miles away and gets to see him about every 3-4 weeks. So made their day, anyways. We did the musical ride for one person, one time, Jackie Kennedy. She's standing up on the podium there, the end division. We went through the whole ride. He was off someplace else, and we did the ride for her. It's just, there's just numerous things that Royal Winter Fair in Toronto, people come along with their furs and finery. They'd have an ice cream in their hand. The horse would go to could get it, and they put their hand back here so the horse couldn't have it, but they're not watching the other horse. Gone. Another one, horse's muzzle in her hand. Ding, there goes the diamond. I mean, what can you do about it? And in Portland, Oregon, we were there, and there was a big storm, and the stable guard guys helped them all out there, and they got commendation for helping all the exhibitors and the animal keepers there. Nothing nicer than going through the mountains on a train, riding up front, right in the wilderness. Hard to believe. We 62 ride. One of the guys lost his forage cap. He was looking out the window by the train, the doorway of the train car, and his hat went off into the bushes. And then the train crew found it. We got it back. Another guy lost his Stetson going across to the island, Vancouver Island. The Coast Guard found it in the ocean. I mean, how lucky you're going to be. Another guy lost his hat on the freeway between Oakland and San Francisco, and we got it back. Lost 3 hats and got everyone back. We were in Fresno, California, and the turkey growers put on a Thanksgiving dinner for us on our Thanksgiving. I think we drank about 5 cream cans full of milk. Those women kind of looking. But yeah, we had many good times and some tough times too. We left Montreal one morning about 5:30, 6 o'clock, and had a continental breakfast. Of course, we're all young guys. And this is quite a few years ago in '62. And we figured continental breakfast, we got her made. We get there and it's a little biscuit and a cup of coffee. We rode the horses to the train, rode the train out to St. Bruno, rode the horse, I think it was 12 miles to Richelieu Race Farms before, and we got dinner at 3 o'clock. They couldn't speak English in St. Bruno, so one guy ordered something, and we said, well, have the same. We all had pork chops. But that was quite a long day on the continental breakfast. Got a stallion given to us down in California. We slept beside it, on him, but he could care less. He was our buddy. Some of our own horses, you had to be careful going through the stalls.
You went from the ride as a Rough Rider. Tell me how did you get to become a Rough Rider?
Well, went through training like everybody else, and I guess somebody must have marked something down, but the section NCO came out and when I was in Wilkie and told me I was going to Regina on a instructor's course. I hadn't applied for it, but I didn't mind. And I went down there for 6 months. Once the 6 months was up, and during that time for this course, we had remounts and had to instruct troops and ride remounts and do everything that you wanted somebody else to do, you had to be able to do yourself. I was in Radisson, and they called me up. I was going to take holidays, and they called me up, and I had to go to Ottawa for the musical ride. But then after that musical ride in '61, I come back to Regina and drove police cars for 3 weeks and went back on the '62 ride. Well, while on the '62 ride, there was one member departed from the staff, and I was the only one left out of the groups that had been trained for the Rough Rider, for training recruits. So I was going on my 3rd musical ride, and I was at the barracks having supper, and a runner came in and told me I was staying, so I had to go down to the freight sheds. And luckily, they were open till 8. Get my belongings because I'd have been nude. Been nothing left, and it would have taken me 2 weeks for the round trip, probably get the stuff back. That's when I started instructing in Regina. I worked right from I was down to the ranch about a month or a month and a half one time at Fort Walsh, but I was an understudy to Ralph Cave, and so he mentored me through the training, and once we got the first troop graduated, then I became a Rough Rider and had the Rough Rider spur insignia. It's kind of a neat thing. But after that, you'd train horses, you'd train recruits, you broke and train harness, carriage work. So I did all of that, but it was all done gradually. Like we used to break our horses a lot rougher, not rougher, but the rough style years ago compared to the latter years. It switched over, and we actually did a lot of work along the way that the Lipizzaners or those fancy, did a lot of lunge work, and it was very easy on the horses. Some of those horses that we brought in from the ranch never did buck once. Well, Wasp was memorable. In his stall, he was a heavy horse. He should never been in there riding, but he was in the stall, he could smother you with kindness. But going into the riding school, if you were close enough at the doorway, he'd kick you. Didn't make any difference who you were. If you were a staff member, if you're going into that riding school, he's going to get a lick if he can. Then we had some were biters. Sinbad. Yeah, Sinbad, he grabbed them, and they don't open their mouth when they let go. You slide out. That Sinbad was a bad one. So there was one little one in Regina. You tell the guys, put the muzzle on, this and that. And some would, oh, I don't need to do that. They're not going to bite. You tell them. Boy, sooner or later, they got a lesson. Lots of times a horse could teach them something that I couldn't. You tell them, but they didn't want to listen to you, but the horse will prove the point. We got this stallion from California, and he put him in the stall, box stall, and the recruits in the morning, they clean him out there. And they got things cleaned up, and they're putting a little feed in and stuff, and grooming away, and he just drop his foot, and the recruit would move. He'd just be eating away a little bit, and bang, kick the wall. First thing you know, something else, and the recruit's out of there. And you go in there, you tell him, just doesn't fizz on him. It wasn't hurting anybody, he just playing. One day, Armstrong and I were in the school with two stallions, and we were, I bet you from here, we're there apart. And Fred was riding the one, and it jumped over and pulled the bridle right off of mine. There we got no reins. I was on the ground and riding around the neck, but he never even batted an eye, this horse. Been one of the other two, we'd had trouble, I'm sure. But that's how quick he was, because Harry's no slouch is handling a horse. Getting back to the part where I was talking about the value of the riding, like PT, always was a percentage in my mind that doesn't make any difference. 15, 20, 25% of them come in there. Wouldn't make a difference whether they had riding or not. But there's a big percentage that made something out of them because they had no choice. They had to work them, and the horse is big. And the horse is not going to hurt them, generally speaking, if they do what they're supposed to. But it brought out some aggressiveness in some of these people. They weren't so afraid, because you go downtown Saturday night, everybody's not to your height. So I think it did a lot for the intestinal fortitude for these guys. Old Paddy Gardner, he had a Bobby. Old Bobby was he was a prince. But old Paddy Gardner, he was just a little guy. And as soon as Bobby heard Paddy coming in the stable door 35 horses away, he'd whinny and they'd unlock the tack room door, the stall door. He'd walk all the way down to see Paddy, and Paddy give him his treat, and he'd walk all the way back to his stall. We had one, they got rid of it because it never would make a ride or anything. It wouldn't go near music. He put one of our other members out of the stall, kicked him out. When I clipped him, I always put his ear in my mouth and clipped the mane. He'd stand still then, but otherwise, I gave him a needle once and he never batted an eye. And he was going real good, jumping and everything else, and Maureen said, let's go try him out. Went down, put the music on, up and over, and I slid out the side and let him roll. But he was just no good. That was the final tribute for that one. Well, the first day that you get the troop for equitation, you don't know how big they are or what. So you give them each a horse, or if you sometimes depend on if there's another troop in there at the same time. Sometimes the first day you go and you have lectures, or you tell them all these kind of things about how to clean saddlery and do all kinds of things like this. Then you kind of get an idea of size-wise what the horse they might fit. So then once the first day, basically, you got to get them on the horse, let alone see them ride. I give more lifts up and over top, because they just had no idea what to do, and they're just too heavy. So it was. Some people you're okay, but generally speaking, when you start out there, 2 or 3 of us would go in there together, because you had so many horses and so many things, and you want to get something done, at least get them on. But generally speaking, when you seen them a time or two, then you started fitting them up with horses that maybe they're too weak to ride a good horse, so somebody that's a good rider, he gets a tougher horse to ride. And some guy doesn't want to listen. Well, these ones that will tune them up, sooner or later, you explain everything to them, but if they don't listen, you can't be there to do all their things for them. And that's what like Churchill said, outside of the horse is good for the inside of a man. And I firmly believe that. You move guys around, they get a little cocky or whatever, put them on a tougher horse. Then quite a change. But it just depends how they. Of course, if we had two troops riding, well then you had to be careful. You may not get the horses you want either. As well as training the recruits riding, there's various horse shows or exhibition, like an escort with the carriage. We needed extra riders for out front and out back. Some of the senior riders were good enough, we'd use them sometimes. But also we as a staff members for the Regina Horse Show or various, or Ottawa's Horse Show or whatever, we would do jumping display, and the jumps weren't high, but we would do it in formation or doubles or fours or whatever. And also we'd have an assault course, which we went around and we went over the jumps. You'd fire a blank shell at a balloon at the end of the jump, and it had saddle soap in it, so that hit the balloon and break. And we go over all the jumps. When you finished your jumps on the revolver, you pick up the sword, and you go around, and you'd stab dummies. You stab as you're going over. And then at the end, you come down, and there was a magnet hanging from a tripod, and there was a ring about maybe 3 inches across, and you'd have to, at full gallop, come along and pick off these rings off hanging from the magnet. Then you put the sword into the dummy at the end, pick up the lance, come around and pick off these rings with the lance at full gallop, and then come around and pick a tent peg out of the ground. We also did Roman riding, which is standing up on the horse, or a team. You stand up there, and first while, your knees are just kill you. But after a while, you could go the whole time the troop was going, riding up there. And those horses never bat an eye. They got used to it. We had 2 surcingles and a turnbuckle in between, keep them together. And after a while, you could just push them in and out with your feet. It was quite amazing. We did that quite a bit. We were coming back from the horse show in Regina, and Jessima was leading one of the stallions, walking, and had him by the stallion reached down and grabbed him, but it didn't get him, just got his belt. It left a scar in the belt buckle. That's close. Musical ride in Brandon. We come into the dome. Lance is back in the bucket, and there we go, coming out of the dome. Well, the one guy's lance caught the reins of the next guy beside him, and it was hooked in between, and nobody saw it. Took off, and the guy 2 horses ahead, the butt fell down, and the point was coming back, and he just turned to the side, and it come up through here, and he shuffled it up, threw it ahead, kept on going. Nobody even saw it. Could have killed him. What is it, 3 pounds pressure? Lance will go through a horse. We had some pretty good class horses, because when we had the horse sale, Han out here bought Warden, who had been brought in as a 3-year-old and was injured or something, and he went back out to the ranch, and it broke him at 5 years of age. And he came in 3rd, I think it was, at the Pan Am Games in Winnipeg a few years after that, against all these big jumpers and stuff. So we had some pretty good horses.